Alec Richardson.
Apologies for the delays. Spent 2 hours on the motorway, so I'm ready to go.
5 this morning.
Briefly, my organisation is, apart from being a very for the last 30 years, we've had a proven international track record in Olympic weightlifting. We're also a social enterprise where, you know, we deliver gala events, things like that, and the money goes back to support our sports side. We've been very successful over a number of years. The big problems we have is, and I'm backing up what Liz says, but the volunteers is fantastic if it's structured right. We've got 12 wonderful coaches in our organisation who all have one thing in common. They've either been at Commonwealth, European or world level in their own careers. This year alone, from the East End of Glasgow, we've produced 50 odd Scottish, 50 odd British, 8 European medals. We've got a couple of people who's going to go into World University Championships. Half a mile from our gym, in the last month, there's been 22 drug raids on houses. 9 kids last week were lifted for assaulting two police who were on cycles. We had 3 jumpers off motorway bridges, all in one weekend. That's the depravity we're facing there. In terms of the Commonwealth Games legacy, people in the Easter House say, what is this legacy? Show me this legacy. I've got a letter here from the director, Bridget McConnell, the director of Glasgow Life, where we put questions to her via our local councillors, because she doesn't talk to people like me, because you'd have to get through freedom of information. And this letter was regarding the Active Glasgow funds, that it's a joint initiative between this committee's funds, or the government's funds, and the local authorities' funds. It's headed up by £4.8 million of Glasgow City Council money for sports development, an additional £750,000, which is allegedly supposed to go to community sports groups, although I don't know if community sports group gets access to it. The £3 million education budget for physical activity was Ring Road and put into that pot, as was £4 million of NHS physical activity money. Also in that pot, or led on through that pot, is your cash back for communities money. And the lead agency obviously is Glasgow Life, the local sports authority. Only Glasgow Life, to me, as far as I'm concerned, is a laundering exercise. They'll lead on the money, and it only goes to places where they know the money's coming back in. I'm making two full-time coaches redundant with 1 year's funding that ends this week, which puts substance onto our good, 12 volunteers, good quality volunteers we've got in the coaching system, but without the 2 full-time guys who will get into the schools, taking the taster sessions, starting a bag shift at 12 o'clock, feeding the kids through, ending their shift in the local club. Without those 2 guys managing the sport, then the whole potency of the other quality volunteers we have falls dead, because they've got their own jobs to do. They can't be doing 101 things to manage it. Liz is right, there's going to be a structure, and that, you know, what I find amazing is that in this letter here, when asked of roughly a £14 million pot of physical activity and sports development money, when the director was asked how much she'd spent in community sport, appallingly, for Glasgow for 500 community sports, she admits here she spent a fantastic £25,000. Basically, community sports groups, we don't know this legacy. The Commonwealth Games legacy in Glasgow is for politicians and departments. They'll hail the fantastic new facilities that departments have there. The East End of Glasgow is supposed to be regenerated. Easter House in Baillieston, we've been tagged with the murder capital of Western Europe. We've been tagged with the lowest life expectancy rate in Western Europe, with direct links through poverty and child obesity. There's not one, or maybe facilities in the East End that Glasgow will say has been built for these games, but certainly not in Easter House, which was the very communities that they used to make a case for the Commonwealth Games. So you understand the way I talk here, maybe too much passion for my own good at times. But the days are gone now where we're going to sit back. I've told Glasgow Life had offered us £3,000 last year towards coaching courses, and what I've basically told them is the days of you lot throwing us crumbs at the table when we're facing real social deprivation. Sport saves lives in places like Easter House, saves lives. We also run physical activity play programmes. Last year we had thousands of kids coming in through the physical activity play. Now, they may not, you know, there's this myth that if a kid's not involved in sport, they're not keeping fit, they have to be involved in sport to keep fit. Not every kid wants to be involved in sport in the early days, but every kid wants to play, and you put your physical activity through play, and then create that base where you can reach progress into sport in later years. And we've been highly successful at that. We've got government reports that's coming out for years how successful we are. But we cannot access the funds that are there for physical activity and sports development, because the bottom line is this: we're the lead agency, we're Glasgow Life, we'll put it to where it's coming back. Now, let's take Glasgow Rocks. Brilliant, fantastic sport, any sport's fantastic, it's kids off the street. But significantly, Glasgow Rocks is a client of Glasgow Life because they pay to hire out facilities for Glasgow Life. But Glasgow Rocks, who are a client of Glasgow Life will lead for them to access cash back for community funds. But while the money is being recovered for communities like mine, groups like mine don't see any of cash back for community funds. Why would Glasgow Life lead on my organisation? We run our own facility. We do our own development plans. Heaven forbid that, apart from feeding X amount of kids from our schools into our facility, but also any crumbs of income that comes in would come into our facility and not Glasgow Life's. There's a laundering exercise here, and people have to take a right good look in the mirror and stop looking at tick box things that's coming in, and then everybody agrees the system's working well. This system is based, as far as I can see, the announcements that Shona Robson has made, is that there seems to be active schools is about quantity rather than quality. Quantity. We had an active, with the mascot launch for the Commonwealth Games in Easterhouse on Sunday, with two so-called city target sports there. The first one was gymnastics. The gymnastics club had to come from Irvine. So where was the gymnastics club getting fed in for the active school sports in Glasgow? It was non-existent. It was meant to be badminton there. We had two badminton coaches hitting a shuttlecock over a net, no kids there demonstrating. Why? Because there's no badminton club in Glasgow. The only worthy sport that was there was our own kids, and we had kids who were all 12 years of age, who already has been at European club level. These kids will still be 18-year-old if Glasgow's successful with the Olympic Youth in 2018. Were they invited to the launch of the 2018 Olympic Youth bid? Not in your life, because of the East End of Glasgow, East Rounds. You know, if there's any success coming from a community sports-based club, then the local authorities make sure that that success is buried at all times, because that could reflect badly. And people like you guys could ask the local authority, why haven't you produced what these community groups are producing? Bridget McConnell, same letter again. She was asked, from your £14 million pot and 16 target sports, how many Scottish, British, European or world-class athletes did you produce? She's very proud to say 7 Scottish and 3 British. You know, we can win 50 times that from a 40 grand, small 40 grand budget. They're not producing. There's no quality coming through. None whatsoever. But meanwhile, like I say, sport from our organisation is a vehicle that saves lives, gets kids off the street. We're not getting the funding. We're not being taken serious through here. As far as I'm concerned, you know, and a great many people involved in the organisation will say, we don't see this legacy. We really, really don't.
Well, there's a challenge. You're not doing anything in the East End of Glasgow, or you're not doing anything in the East End of Glasgow, and these are deprived communities that need that support more than any other communities. Does anyone want to take that? Bob, you want to take that responsibility?
Well, I have to say, I'm not going to take that, Mr. Richardson, but what I would ask is, given what you've said, you've done yourself a great service today by putting quite clearly on the record what you think the shortfalls are. It's a lot for MSPs to take in. As a Glasgow MSP, I'd be keen to meet with you as soon as possible after this meeting to discuss.
They'll never come here unless I can back up what I say, so...
No, absolutely. So
feel
for me,
free as long as you're
perhaps, well, if you're hanging
about
about after this meeting, perhaps we could have a meeting to discuss some of the details there, because I think it has to be taken forward in detail, and I'd be keen to do that. Yeah.
Because I've been 30 years. We started our organisation a coal cellar because we had no facilities. 30 years. And what I don't want to see is, basically at the end of the day, my board of directors were voluntary. I should say voluntary board of directors has given me licence for our organisation with a 30-year history to put our head above the parapet today, because we will probably be hammered when we go back now with the local authorities, because we dare to even raise these things.
So,
You know.
so can we open that folder and discuss after this meeting some of the details, so a lot of
Yeah,
details we can put on
yeah,
there?
absolutely. It's a committee meeting. It's not, surgery. So yeah. No, you didn't answer the person's concern, Bob. You offered them an appointment, and we'll all be interested in doing that. So so we can get back on.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, the success that my organisation's had through the years is the school pathway to the local club is absolutely vital. And we're very good at what we do in that respect. However, there's quite a lot of sports being taught in the active schools just now. And the club in the community, it's not there, it doesn't exist. My idea of target sports should be, if there's 2-3 sports in a certain area of a city, and they've got the backing of the community, they've got a track record, they've got a history over years, then for that area, that should be the target sport. And that's where the pathway links with active schools should be working on. And in terms of, there's 2 elements that you're working on. The first part is the logistics side of sports development. And I'll just show you this quickly. We have 20 primary schools that feeds onto 4 secondary schools that all feed onto our weightlifting gym, which is falling down, which is the excellence base. And kids find a level progressing through there. A lot of people will see, one of the big things I see is that we make sure there's a real top quality coach at the bottom level, so that the skills are taught well from the very, very beginning. We don't wait till the kids progress and then there's bad habits being formed and their technical ability, but you've made it to this level, now we'll give you a better standard of coach. So it's not the way we work. We make sure it's quality from the very day the child is introduced to the sport and decides that they're enthusiastic and want to go further. I'm a great believer that X amount of funds for sports development should go, maybe the community hubs will be a structure for that, but should go to well-established amateur sports groups, because for a kick-off, number one, the pathway is there because you're funding the club. A sports club will be constituted to take a kid as far as it can to the top in their sport. Whereas somebody that's teaching a taster session with a local authority, they see themselves as providing a service. Well, I was in the school today, I taught that sport, the bells went now, and I'm off home. They don't have a club or anything to feed on it. So I think it's important that we should see, I'm not saying that, what I'm basically saying is every piece of funding shouldn't be taken as granted that all is done through the local authority and they deliver sports development. Find the well-run, the well-structured amateur sports clubs. Allow them to employ a developing officer or a coach. Let them get into the schools and bounce it back through the pathway that exists because you're funding them because they exist in the first place, rather on a theory.
Total sense, because if I look at my sport, there's been an enormous investment into mini tennis, because you can play indoors with a wee bat and sponge ball on a badminton court. But if there's no tennis court anywhere nearby, you do not get all of those kids that have tried mini tennis onto a full-size tennis court. So therefore, as a tennis exercise, it's wasted. So I completely hear what you're coming from, and I totally agree with the best coaches going in at the young age to develop the skills. Totally agree with that. It's absolutely crucial. And we don't do that. We don't do that enough.
We're going to